On today's episode, we're going to be breaking down 16 of the absolute biggest steals of the 2025 NHL Draft.
You are Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, and welcome back to Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this show, we break down everything prospects related for you Monday through Friday, 5 days a week. I'm your host, Sebastian High, the USHL scout over at Elite Prospects. And on today's episode, we're going to be sifting through all 224 picks of the 2025 NHL Draft, selecting just 16 of them to highlight as high-value steals on draft day. Of course, by only selecting 16 of 200 plus, I'm not going to be able to mention everyone. So I'm going to miss potentially some of your favorite names here, but please do leave them in the comments down below, the players that you see as the biggest steals on draft day, whether or not they made my final list here. And I did put them in some kind of order, but I didn't overthink it. So maybe hold your criticisms a little bit if the ranking itself in terms of numbers isn't the most polished, because I've spent so much time on rankings this year. I just wanted to do one that I wasn't overthinking for once. It was a nice relief putting together this list, but we're going to be talking about some of the highest value guys, and we'll be doing a bit of a countdown in this. We'll be going from number 16 to number 1 in the steals throughout the episode. So we'll be kicking things off with picks 16 through 11, then 10 through 6, and then finally with the big top 5 in the third segment. I'll have timestamps down below, as always, if you want to jump around the episode here a little bit on YouTube. If you're on your podcasting platform, those timestamps do unfortunately not work quite as well there, so I do not add them in, but you can always head over to YouTube if you want to experience this episode in that way. So make yourselves comfortable and let's just dive straight into the show here, because we have a wide variety of selection of players here to talk about. We're not just talking about the first rounders. We're not just talking about the late picks. We have a real big smorgasbord of a variety of players, and we're kicking things off with a bit of a later selection in this draft at 153 overall. The Toronto Maple Leafs selecting Harry Nansi of the Owen Sound Attack, a player I've really liked this season. And for those of you that hung out with me on the live stream I did as well for day 2 of the draft, this was a pick I really, really liked, to the extent that in the own exercise that I do in selecting the players that I would if I were in the shoes of the Montreal Canadiens with their draft picks, I picked Harry Nansi slightly before he went here to the Toronto Maple Leafs, and it's for a multitude of reasons. He's a 6'3", 185-pounder right shot forward. He can play center. He can play wing. And he's a September 10th birthday, so just 5 days off the cutoff for next year's draft. Very, very young for the draft class here, and he wasn't producing all that much this season. It was just a second campaign with Owen Sound, and he logged 7 goals and 16 assists for 23 points in 67 games. But what he does incredibly well is accessing lanes that others can't. He pushes through checks. He's a very powerful player, excellent in battling for the puck along the boards. He's capable of slipping pucks and hooking them across or through the different defender sticks. He's a really capable net front guy as well. I think that the passing skills have a lot of room to grow as well down the road. He's very much the kind of project pick that I think the Maple Leafs have been very successful with in recent seasons in terms of developing. So he's the first player here in terms of the draft day steals at number 16. Moving on to number 15, we have the San Jose Sharks and Cole McKinney, a player I've watched all season long with the NTDP. I logged 8 or 9 full-on scouting reports on him throughout the campaign, and he's a player that I really respect. He's incredibly engaged in both directions. He's a player that you just know what you're going to get every single shift in terms of work ethic. He plays a fairly simple north-south game, but developed a much more complex connective passing game over the course of this season, which makes me really hopeful for how his development will evolve in the coming seasons. He's a player that has a decent shot, is solid at the net front, but more than anything, plays at pace. His feet move fast, his motor goes fast, and his processing has gone pretty fast as well as the years gone on. I've really liked his progression. And another good piece of news for the San Jose Sharks, he's off to the University of Michigan for his development, one of the best development programs in the country. And he finished the season off a lot stronger than he began it as well. I mean, first half of the campaign was difficult for a lot of the NTDP, and McKinney was not exempt from that entirely, but he was a big part in still just playing a reliable, physical, middle-driven, hardworking style, even when the things around him weren't really coming together. But in the back half, he really started putting the offense on his back more, creating at pace, using his shots, scoring at a much higher clip in the back half in the USHL. He really did step things up, and at his best was also really flashing playmaking skills. So I think for the San Jose Sharks, you're getting a very projectable bottom six center here. I think that McKinney's going to play minutes in the National Hockey League at the very least, with that motor, with that pace, but also has some more room to grow into a really solid third line guy that can chip in on a second line if injuries do arise. I think that ceiling is there with this player, and he's probably just going to need like 3 years, maybe 4 years of development before he's capable of munching some defensive minutes at the NHL level, while also contributing on the PK. Could be a good bumper on a second power play unit. He's very versatile, and I think it's a profile of intense two-way center who brings a physical element that San Jose was missing in their pool. So I love this draft pick for a player that I had ranked 16 slots higher than he ended up going here at 53. Moving on to number 14 of the biggest steals on draft day, the Montreal Canadiens stepping up to the plate and trading up in the third round to 69th overall to select Hayden Paupanekis, a player that I had ranked 23 slots higher than this. A very, very interesting project to take on for the Montreal Canadiens, and a player that I think has a lot more offense to show than he's been able to really showcase so far in his young career. He's a big 6'5", 203-pound right shot center, developing in the WHL with the Kelowna Rockets, and he's well positioned on that team, I think, to take on really big offensive loads next season, playing alongside Atija Ginla on a top line, being that number one center in the WHL. I think that that Kelowna could really build something around this player. He plays with real pace, good details, constant physicality, but he also has a really good level of mobility and crossover speed, explosiveness, and being able to handle really, really nicely at those higher gears. I think this is a guy that has that baseline energy forward, defensive center, physicality, PK specialist kind of mold to him, but also more room to build off of that with that skill, with that pace, with that mobility and handling ability at pace at the very most. And I also think that the in-stride wristers are a capable element to build around in terms of transition goal scoring ability. There's so much to like with this player. I think there's a lot of runway and a lot of headroom to build on what he is at this stage. So great selection there by the Montreal Canadiens. Then we have with number 13 of the biggest steals at 19th overall, the St. Louis Blues selecting Justin Carbonneau, a player I had ranked at 10th overall on my final board, who brings all the skill in the world, and I think a fantastic get for St. Louis, which might also open the door to a potential Jordan Kyrou trade down the road, because you have players like a Jimmy Snuggerud, like a Justin Carbonneau coming in the following seasons. I think that there is now that kind of fallback prospect pool that you can really envision playing top 6 minutes someday, which hasn't always been the biggest area of strength in recent seasons for the St. Louis Blues. So I adore this selection. He has really big upside, wicked shot, great hands, physical element, good skater. The engagement, the motor, the consistency are still coming along a little bit, but I think this guy could easily end up among the 7 top scorers of the 2025 NHL draft class. So to get that talent at 19th overall, that's a steal in my book. Moving on to number 12, we have another first round selection here, this time from the Ottawa Senators at 23rd overall, nabbing Logan Hensler from the University of Wisconsin. I had him ranked 13th overall, so getting him 10 slots lower than where I had him. Great value. What he brings and what I think Ottawa is going to love is a foil to Carter Yakimchuk down the right side, where Yakimchuk is an elite level handler, always aggressive, and pushes the pace offensively, but really has some holes on the defensive side. With Logan Hensler, you have a foundation to build off in terms of defensive solidity, defensive habits, defensive physicality, and mobility that I think is a much stronger defensive foundation than a Carter Yakimchuk has. On top of that, Hensler also does have elements of dynamism and offense in his game. By year's end, he was really steaming down into the offensive zone off the rush, handling through entire defenses, and really trying to create with his skill set, with that high-end mobility. He's really good physically. He's still raw, and especially in terms of the decision-making, but I think that Wisconsin was just not a great place for him to be developing, to really showcase the extent of his NHL upside this season. So he slipped on draft day, and the Ottawa Senators got an absolute bargain on their hands there at 23rd overall. But to wrap up this first segment of the episode, we have the New York Rangers in the second round getting a really, really good selection there with Malcolm Spence, a player I had ranked 16 slots higher than this on my final rankings, and I was far from the most bullish scout out there on Malcolm Spence. He was pretty much a consensus first-round guy in the public sphere, and brings so much character, so much work rate, so much projectability to his toolkit that I didn't see him falling beyond like 40 on draft day. I thought there was a chance of him slipping into the second round because he doesn't have that exciting dynamic flair that other first-round projects do, even in the latter half of that range. Still, I think with Malcolm Spence, you get a perfect fit in with the New York Rangers system. He might be playing NHL minutes within like 2 seasons. He is a guy that I think has a lot of refinement in his habits, in his engagement, in his physical maturity, and also has a decent amount of mobility and goal scoring skill and handling ability and pace, and he's just very, very versatile. He's perhaps not a master at any one thing just yet, but he's really, really, really good in so many different facets. I see an NHL player here 9.5 days out of 10. So great selection on day 2 for the New York Rangers. But that wraps things up here for the first segment. And the next one, we'll be keeping things going with my 10th to 6th biggest steals of the 2025 NHL Draft. But first, a quick message from our sponsors here at Locked On NHL Prospects. Ever wish that managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it really can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition of managing your money, you can also build wealth. Having all of these things concentrated in one single place has really made my organizational task a lot easier in my day-to-day, managing my income and overall just tracking my spending to make sure I don't spend over budget on a month-to-month basis. So Monarch is an absolute savior. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. All right, let's keep this episode rolling here in the second segment, breaking down the biggest steals on draft day here in the 2025 NHL Draft that's just wrapped up. So going on, we have at number 10, a very, very fun player who ended up with the Philadelphia Flyers with one of their, 4, 5 second-round picks. They had a bunch, and they went so good value with each of them. I could have included almost any of those guys in this slot. I could have gone for a guy like Jack Murtagh, who I greatly respect. There's just so much value. Carter Amoko, I thought, was a solid selection, maybe not steal worthy, but really solid, as well as, of course, Matthew Guard in the late second round as well, which I thought was good value. But here we'll be focusing on Shane Vansaghi at 48th overall, a player I had ranked 20 slots higher. He was 28th on my final board inside of my first round. I see a player that, of course, has vicious violence already in his game. Right, he's 6'2", over 200 pounds, extremely heavy, playing a great role as a checker on a fourth line capacity with Michigan State University last season. But in those minutes, it was like 10 minutes a night. he still was able to score almost half a point a game. Like, the offense is budding with this player. Just the opportunities weren't fully there this season. I think this is great value in the second round, where you already have a foundation where you have an almost slam dunk NHLer, which is already gold in the second round. But on top of that, you have more offense to explore with middle drive and meanness and a power game that's growing. I love this pick for the Philadelphia Flyers, and I think he had a lot of reason to go on day one of the 2025 NHL Draft. But let's move on. At number 9 of the biggest steals on draft day, the Carolina Hurricanes were, of course, going to feature, and they're actually here back to back. So first, we have a third round selection of theirs, and it is unsurprisingly a Russian player. Kurban Limatov going 67th overall. With his level of high-end mobility, great physicality, and above-average handling skill, I thought he was for sure going to be a second-round selection. He's got size, he's got that fluidity. There's not much not to like. He's going to be a bit longer of a project, perhaps, like talking about 5 years rather than 4. But still, I think that he's a guy that's going to be really good value down the stretch. I had him ranked right at the early end of the second round, and he ended up going 31 slots lower than where I ranked him. So really great bet there for the Carolina Hurricanes. Then they backed that up with Filip Ekberg with their final selection in the 7th round at 221 in the draft order. They got they got the highest scorer at the U18 Worlds this season, who had 10 goals in 7 games there with Team Sweden, just coming to life with his high IQ, anticipatory offensive game with some really lethal finishing ability in tight, who just wasn't given opportunities this season with the Ottawa 67s. Dave Cameron coming in and torpedoing a skilled player like he always knows to do, as he did with Team Canada at the World Juniors. He did again with a player in his ranks in the OHL, and Filip Ekberg's draft stock really, really took a hit as a result. This is a player who scored a hat trick in Hockey Allsvenskan as a 15-year-old a couple years ago. Really, really been on the map in terms of that high IQ and just maturity in how he approaches the game. And I think that he's a great bet in the back half of the draft, let alone in one of the final selections of the 7th round. Carolina Hurricanes doing it again and finding value where other teams do not. Then we have the Boston Bruins with William Moore at 51, a player I watched a lot this season as well. Think that the IQ and overall the way of thinking the game and how that meshes with good skating, a heavy shot, intelligent playmaking, good handling, and a lot of runway for physical growth. This is the kind of swing that you just do take, in my opinion, in the second round. And to do so after 50th overall for a player that came into the season as a consensus top 20, top 15 guy, and was even still like a pretty sure bet to go top 40, top 45, I thought, coming into the draft. To get him lower than that range, I thought was just doubling down on skill and IQ in the top 2 rounds of the Boston Bruins, to pair that with another steal they got earlier on draft day, which we're going to be talking about a little bit later here in the show. I think the Bruins just did fantastically here at the draft, going for upside and also going for players that will be playing college in Boston next season. So they'll be able to keep a very close eye, get lots of viewings in, and also help direct that development path, which I think is exciting here for William Moore, who is committed to Boston University next campaign. But moving on to the 6th biggest steal of the 2025 NHL Draft, we have another Montreal Canadiens selection here, this time outside the top 100 at 113th overall, picking from the NTDP Little John LJ Mooney, a player with tremendous dynamism, great skill, the handling ability, the skating, the pace, the physicality. Yeah, he's 5'6", 5'7", but he's a very physically engaged player. He's constantly trying to get to the middle of the ice, initiating contact, trying to get underneath bigger opponents to work leverage on them. He's a player I think that has a pathway to the NHL despite his size, and could be a Brendan Gallagher kind of torchbearer in the future for the Habs, because he brings a lot more, I think, dynamism than Gallagher ever did, but he has that dog in him. He's got that mentality to just outwork everyone else around him. And I think that when you pair that with a blossoming playmaking game, he has really good playmaking flashes. The consistency and the degree of the amount of hope plays he attempts still needs a lot of reining in. Like, he's going to need some time here to develop the offensive habits and just picking his spots rather than just like throwing everything and seeing what sticks. But still, I think that this is a swing so worth taking out to the top 100. I had him ranked 62 slots higher than where they got him, right around the 50 range. So I think the Montreal Canadiens did absolutely phenomenally here with that selection at 113. But that wraps up the second segment. In the final one, we'll be going through the top 5, including a guy by the name of James Hagens, who makes an appearance going to the Boston Bruins. The Bruins really did do great business here at the draft, rebuilding their team from the bottom up through their prospect pool. But first, a quick message from our sponsors here at Locked On NHL Prospects. All right, let's wrap up the show here by focusing in on our top 5 steals of the 2025 NHL Draft. And again, please do leave the comments down below on YouTube, letting me know who your biggest steals are, because this is, of course, entirely subjective. And I'm sure this ranking could have gone through more thought and a bit more refinement. But hey, we have a selection of players that I just think are such fun swings here at the draft. And we're kicking things off with a player that never should have made it outside day one. Blake Fiddler going to the Seattle Kraken at 36th overall. The big 6'4" right shot defenseman who skates like the wind, hits like a truck, very physical, great rush defender, smothers players into the boards night after night. Great defensive skating, and also a player with a lot of skill in the breakout. This is a guy who was an exit generator for the Edmonton Oil Kings. I think that when you pair that frame, that mobility, being very young for the draft class, with a very projectable combination of skills, which is killing plays off the rush and then launching attacks from the back end. He's still learning in terms of getting involved in the offensive zone. Like, the entry numbers aren't impressive at all, and the offensive zone creation isn't either. But he has the tools, he has the IQ, and he has the vision to make things happen. I think the room to grow with Blake Fiddler is extraordinarily exciting. Why he fell on draft day, I don't know. Maybe he didn't interview all that well, but a player of his skill set, with that runway coming from hockey lineage as well. I mean, the son of Vernon Fiddler, of course. I think that Seattle got a really, really, really great value selection there. A clear, like top 20 for me. Like, I'm ranked 20th overall. To get that at 36 on day 2 of the draft, wowee, with a 6'4" package in a draft where all the big guys went early, I think that was just excellent business there from Seattle, where I thought that they weren't really picking a direction or maybe selecting a player who complements what they have in their system with Jake O'Brien. I thought that he maybe replicates a lot of other things that they already have in the system. Blake Fiddler's the inverse. I think he's exactly what they've been lacking. So really great selection there for the Kraken. And at 16th overall, with the first selection that the New York Islanders got from the Montreal Canadiens in that Noah Dobson deal, they went and selected a great value pick with Victor Eklund, my 4th biggest steal of the 2025 NHL Draft. I had him ranked 9 slots higher at 7th overall on my final board. I think you're getting very, very clear high-end value. Could have also included Carter Bear in this slot. I think either of these guys going at 13 and 16 respectively were really, really great value in the teens for the teams that selected them. But we're focusing here on Victor Eklund, who I think played a bigger role, arguably, than Anton Frondel in securing SHL promotion this season for Jurgen IF, returning there after a heartbreaking playoff defeat last season, where Eklund was also a part of that team. Frondel was not. And in his second run, made it happen there this season. I think he has the skill, the determination, still has a lot of physical runway to fill out his frame, but is already so middle driven and skilled with the handling, the playmaking and tight, the pace. He's a guy that I think is just born to play New York Islanders style of suffocating hockey. He's going to fit in really, really nicely in that system. So lots to be excited for if you are a Long Island fan. But at number 3 of biggest steals, we have Lynden Lakovic to the Washington Capitals at 27th overall, a player that almost pained me to rank him at 14th overall on my final board, because I had internal arguments for him as high as like 8 or 9. Like, a player I've loved this season in terms of pure skill and runway. 6'4", 200 pounds. Definitely still has to work on the physical side of his game, but I think that he's very intelligent and extraordinarily skilled. Whether it's the shot, the playmaking, the handling, the high-end processing at speed, sure, the skating needs a bit of work here, but wow, I think that this guy is a really, really high likelihood top 6 piece to be able to get in the late, like one of the last 5 picks of the first round. The Washington Capitals did really great work there, and the idea of pairing him down the stretch with a guy like Ryan Leonard, who can really carry that physical burden for a line, who I think that exciting things are to come there for the Washington Capitals with the players that they have in their pool. Just so much skill. I think a lot of complementary toolkits, really great value there at 27. But for number 2, the second biggest steal of the 2025 NHL Draft, and it's in the top 10. It's James Hagens at 7th overall to the Boston Bruins, a player that I had at 3 on my board. Sure, he only went 4 slots lower than where I had him ranked, but he went a full tier lower than where I had him ranked. I thought he was a step above the players going in that overall like 3 to 6 range on draft day. None of them are guys I would have picked ahead of James Hagens, and the Boston Bruins profited from that fall. A player that brings so much pace, so much mobility, so much mechanical refinement. There is no player more mechanically gifted offensively in this year's draft class than James Hagens. How everything in his toolkit is layered upon one another with that high-end mobility, the speed, the deft handling skill, the elite playmaking. All of these things, I think, just come together in such a deceptive NHL type of package. 7th overall, great value there for the Boston Bruins. But it wasn't quite enough to take that number 1 slot for me, because the biggest faller for me, and to me, the biggest surprise, even though I was braced for a surprise, Cameron Schmidt falling all the way to 94th overall at the end of the 3rd round to the Dallas Stars, getting their Logan Stanko in replacement with a nearly 4th round draft pick. Like, absurd value there in my view. With Cameron Schmidt, you get the best linear, like a straight line skater in this year's draft class. In terms of speed generation, no player beats Cameron Schmidt in an end-to-end ice race in this entire draft, in my opinion. On top of that, you get a wicked motor, potentially the best shot in the entire draft class as well, mechanically, with the power, the precision, the versatility in that arsenal, and the deception he's able to layer into his goal scoring. Just exceptional stuff. Handling that is pretty much at that level, maybe just one notch below, but he's easily a top 3 puck handler in this year's draft class as well. And on top of that, you get playmaking and you get that snarl, you get physicality. Yeah, he's 5'7", but this guy charges into the middle of the ice, and he's inconsistent. The reads need work, and he's going to need time, like say 4, 5, 6 years maybe to make it. But at the end of that road, oof, I think there's a really potent NHL player here, and I had him ranked inside my top 25 for a reason, right? Like, he is a guy that I think could move the needle for a team in the offensive zone down the stretch, and to get that in the late 3rd round, that is the steal of the draft, in my opinion. But I would love to hear about your guys' opinions as well. Who is your biggest steal? Who are your biggest top 3 steals of a draft? I'd love to hear from you as always. And is there a player that I included in this episode who actually wasn't a steal? Was I wrong on some of these? Again, I'd love to hear of your thoughts down below as well. But that wraps things up. If you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, please do make sure to make us your first listen of the day. It's always greatly appreciated. And for your second listen, you can head on over to Locked On Fantasy Hockey, where Flip and Steel break down everything that you need to know to build yourself a competitive and sustainable fantasy roster. That's all from me. I'm your host, Sebastian High. Thank you so much for tuning in as always, and I'll catch you listening again very soon.